Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm so excited for today's episode. I have a special guest on with me today, Amanda Monnier. Hopefully, I said that right.
Yep.
And
Okay.
Amanda is an energy healer, a certified magnetic mind coach, certified yoga teacher, an emotion code practitioner, a certified transformational nutrition coach, and she holds a bachelor's in psychology. And she assists her clients in healing old wounds and upleveling to the highest soul aligned version of themselves. So I thought she would be a perfect guest to have on here on the Living in Alignment podcast. And Amanda, I know that you mostly focus on women in your business. My listeners aren't all women, so I'm hoping that you can help them too. The
Absolutely.
ones
This is
that
for everybody.
yeah. I figured, but we all have our niches. That doesn't mean that we're specifically defined to only that niche, but anyway, how are you doing today?
I'm so good. Thank you so much, Amy, for having me on. I was so excited, especially whenever I see like alignment in the title of something, it just like lights me up even more. So I was super excited when you invited me to be a guest. I'm super happy to be here.
Yeah, well, I'm glad to have you. And yeah, living in alignment and anything that has to do with alignment is my passion as well. So, before we get into all the nitty gritty, I just want to ask you a question. I know this wasn't in your bio, but I was reading somewhere about how you used to be a law enforcement officer. And I know I just read off all these other credentials, this extreme awesome list of credentials that you have now with your energy healing and your magnetic mind coaching and your yoga instructor. So how did you go from being a law enforcement officer? Tell me a little bit about like what that job was and how you pivoted to become an energy healer.
Yeah, it's interesting. I know whenever people find out that I was actually a probation officer, did it a little under 6 years, 5.5 years or so. And I loved it. I did love it. I learned so much. But when people are like, wait, you were a probation officer and now you're an energy healer, like what? Where does that like come from? And so it was definitely just part of my journey, really. So when I graduated college, it was about a year after I had graduated. I got hired on with a county probation department. And it was something where actually throughout my time and journey there, I had my spiritual awakening, if you will. I started to really wake up to I guess what it more so what it means to be human, and really just kind of pulling back the curtain on a lot of things as far as who I really was. And it was very interesting because there were a couple things that happened. One being like a pretty heart-wrenching breakup during my time there that kind of like jolted me. It was like not like a rock bottom, but it was kind of like this very like it was a very hard time for me. And it just started like I started just asking a lot of questions, and like kind of like with going within a little bit more, feeling like, okay, like I always felt, even as a little girl, like life's supposed to be amazing. And it always felt like something was missing for me. And, I would wake up and I would just kind of go through the motions every day. And granted, there were things I did love about, being in that environment and in my life in general, my family, everything like that. But there was always just like this missing piece of the puzzle that it was like almost like this like thing within me that I couldn't describe and I didn't know how to put words to, but I just knew it was there. So, long story short, as far as me ending up leaving, I think I knew this was probably about a year or two ago, because I had been doing the energy work for quite some time. And I just kind of knew that eventually I was going to step into it. But it was like that part of me that was still like afraid, and afraid of judgment, afraid of other people. Like it's not, you don't hear every day people are like, oh, I'm an energy healer. Like you're going from like having a pension and health insurance and all this stuff. And you're like, okay, I'm going to quit and be an energy healer. Like people are like, what? And
Mhm.
I did kind of sidestep. Like I worked with my family for several months, but then it was kind of those things where it's like the universe, it was like the nudges became screams and I had no choice. It was time to step into like my soul aligned truth. And at this point, I've never looked back.
Yeah. That's awesome. I love how you, listened to the nudges from the universe. I think that's one of the things that I love to do as well. It's not always easy to do because a lot of times we think that we're crazy when we're getting these nudges or these signs or messages that we're supposed to do something that doesn't make sense. And oftentimes I've found too that those things, most of the time, they don't make sense to the other people in our lives. And so sometimes people think we're crazy. And so I commend you for moving past the judgment and the criticism or whatever happened as you pivoted from having the pension to, you know, doing your own things. I know that's not always an easy thing to do. Although I have found, and tell me if this is true for you, I have found that every time that I listen to that intuition and I take the leap, that there's like a huge reward on the other side. Did you find
Yeah.
that?
Absolutely. And to speak to even too, like you mentioned, like as far as like some of these nudges feeling crazy, it's like those are usually the ones that are like the most like amazing. Like when you have those nudges and you're like, that sounds insane. That usually means for
Mm-hmm.
me, it's like coming from my higher self or my super conscious or the divine. And it's like those are
Mm-hmm.
the ones like that. It's like, no, like listen to those because it's
Mm-hmm.
like those things that you can't like fully explain, that are like coming through from this like higher perspective, because I think as a society in general, we're so conditioned to play small. So many people, I would say the majority of the people, at least that I know, wake up every day. They're like, okay, I got to get up. I got to go to my 9 to 5. I got to get my menial paycheck. And, I got to pay the mortgage. I got to do all these things. And it's so rooted in this like conditioned identity where when we're able to kind of break through that and shed those pieces, because the way I explain it to people is like it's like we have this like divine channel, this connection with who we truly are, like at that soul level, and all the other stories and emotions and other things, the dense energies just muck that channel up. So it's like when we can really be coming from that place of soul alignment and unleashing this like authenticity that's within us, because we all have it. It's just really most people forget. It's like a remembrance, is what it is, of who you really are, because you can never lose that. Who you really are as a soul is like that remembrance piece.
Mm-hmm. I love how you say like the crazy things, the nudges or whatever are often, the most awesome, because that's what I found too. Like I've had some things that I've actually done in my life that I, on a conscious level, like from my conscious mind, I don't think I ever would have come up with these ideas on my own. Like for example, I kept having this reoccurring dream that I needed to move to New Zealand for 6 months, and I didn't know why. And all of a sudden I was like, okay, I'm going. And everybody thought I was completely insane. And they're like, what are you doing? Like I sold everything I owned and I got a backpack and I went to New Zealand by myself. And people were like, why are you doing this? I'm like, I'm not really sure. I just know that I'm supposed to, like I keep getting this message that I'm supposed to do it. And it was one of the most life-changing experiences of my life. It was, like I had to overcome all of these obstacles to actually get on the plane. But once I did, like it was almost like I was just guided the entire time. I never had to think about what to do next. Miracles happened every single day. It taught me a new level of trust in myself and in my higher self and in the universe and in life. I mean, I learned so much on that trip, but like I said, like pretty much everyone in my life, other than like my father and my brother, people that have known me my whole life and know that how I operate, were like, what are you doing? What are you, you know what I mean? So I think a lot of times when we're courageous enough to actually just follow those callings, even though they make no sense. I did not know one single person in New Zealand. Nobody told me to go there. Like it just didn't make sense, but it wouldn't stop. Like I kept getting this message, So I think it's true. Sometimes the craziest nudges that we get are the ones where the biggest gifts come from in our lives. And I also think it's dead on what you said about people just with the status quo and just having this like identity where we feel like we're just supposed to go through the motions until we die. And I actually just published a podcast today about playing small. Life is too short to play small. And unfortunately, I feel like a lot of people just get into the habit of playing small and going through the motions until their life is over. And then that's it. Right. So, yeah. So I love that you listened to the nudges.
Yeah. When you said the whole thing about trust, that like got chills on my body, like I think that is like, because at the end of the day too, it's like if someone had right in front of you all the deepest desires of your heart and soul, you'd be like, yeah, I want that. But it's like people don't see it right in front of them, and so they don't think it's possible. But it's really something we can learn how to consciously create our life, rather than, it's like that co-creative piece, right? So it's like we're consciously putting out there what we want and then co-creating with the universe. And that's where that trust and surrender piece comes in, which is like the hardest for most people, myself included. Like sometimes I'm like, okay, I've been putting the intention out there, I've been, consciously creating this, and it's not here yet. And it's like, we can't, like, divine timing is divine timing. Like we can't force certain things to happen. And so I think that's where like the balancing act, and some of the things that are kind of challenging is when people don't see it right in front of them, they're like, they don't fully believe it. But it's like that piece of embodying it and being it and raising, like up leveling to be that thing and embody it before you see it in your physical reality. Because if we aren't coming that from that frequency and vibration, then we're continuing to create on like that unconscious autopilot. And that's why so many people end up in the same patterns. It can be from like relationships to, things with business. It's like Groundhog's Day. And the thing is too, is I want to make sure that people know there's nothing wrong with you. You're not broken. It's just more so this, and there's nothing right and wrong about it. It's just, that's just the way that the universe works. And it took me a long time to figure it out. And this was kind of like that missing puzzle piece I was talking about, to where we really do have the ability to consciously create what we want, and those things within us that we deeply desire, like within our heart, are things we're actually supposed to have. It's just, you got to release all the things that aren't that to be able to allow it to come in.
Mm-hmm. So as far, I know you talk a lot about soul alignment. I've heard you say it a couple of times, and I know that that's a big part of, the work that you do. So how would you define soul alignment, and, why is it important?
Yeah. So for me, soul alignment is being 110% all in on you, authentic, like coming from that place of heart and soul. And again, going back to those things that just make you unique. And like the energy that we bring to something is like, it's gonna affect, like people are gonna feel it. Like, let's say I'm writing a blog post and I'm having kind of an off day and I'm not feeling inspired, like it's gonna come through on that post. So as far as like soul alignment, it's like just living in that place of passion and inspiration, and really just being true to ourselves, because we sacrifice in so many areas, we settle sacrifice in so many areas of our lives. And it just breaks my heart when you see so many people in these cycles of depression and just unhappiness and whatnot, because it's really it's a lot easier than people realize to shift it. It really truly is, because when we're focusing on our end results of what it is we want to create from this place of alignment, just because we'd love to have them, it just opens everything up. We're taught, especially like in the personal development industry, a lot of it is like, oh, you have to fix this. Oh, you have to heal this. Yes. And I mean, I'm an energy healer, so I help people with that. But I never once will go into a session to where I'm not setting them into, what is it that you just love to have? What is it? And let's feel it. Let's get into it. Let's create from that space, and get into that aligned version of what it is. Like, what is aligned for you? Because what's aligned for me is probably going to be something that's different than what's aligned for you. And that comes to like our unique soul, like blueprint on what we choose to experience.
So do you think that people, like, is it something that people can learn how to do to get into alignment? Or is it something like, once you do it once, it becomes easier over time? Or what are your thoughts on that?
Oh, absolutely. People can learn this stuff, and it's a lot easier than most people realize. But where I've noticed with my clients, a lot of the challenges come. It's like they instinctually kind of want to problem solve. Like, oh, this came up or this came up. I'm like, okay, well, let's go back to what the intention is of what you really truly want to create. And then the energy healing is just really releasing resistance to having that thing, to embodying that thing, to being able to like live the life you love, or have the healthy body that you want to have, or, be in like your soul aligned true essence. We're releasing all the stuff that's blocking that, really, is where it's not like, oh, there's something wrong with you, we need to get to the bottom of it. That's not, to me, that's not, I just don't approach it from that direction. But yes, I mean, absolutely people can. And as far as like connecting with like your soul and your intuition, you can easily access that by tuning and tapping into your heart space. Like the heart, it has more neurons than any other like center of the body. The heart field is extremely powerful. And a lot of us function in the mind. Like I have kind of a tendency sometimes to go into my head and like, okay, I want to analyze this and that. But when we drop into our heart, and then when we connect, just even setting the intention to connect. I work with super conscious. And it's kind of another word for higher self. Super conscious is just a field of energy, basically, that contains all the information about us. So when we tune in and tap into our heart space, that gives us direct access to those things, and we can work from that space versus from the head space. And then it's like, I always say, like when we're leading with our heart and soul, like you can't get it wrong. There's nothing you can get wrong.
Right. And do you find that I'm actually reading a book about this right now, about manifestation, and it's something that I've been studying for years, but it's just this book happens to be just a whole different approach to it. And it talks about using your mind as little as possible, and like getting into the not mind, which is just kind of what you're talking about here. Do you find that from your experience or working with other people, that it's easier to manifest the things that we desire when we get out of our mind? I mean, I think that's kind of what you were talking about when you come from your heart and not your mind. But as far as manifestation goes, how does that work from the type of work that you do?
Absolutely. I'm wondering if it's one of Dr. Joe Dispenza's books. I know he talks about all that, like losing your mind. So I thought of that. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely when we're in like our headspace, it's all totally different. It's totally different. Yeah. So absolutely, like when we're getting into that heart field, and I would say in addition to that, it's like the universe communicates in like the frequencies of emotion, and like our mind and body don't know the difference. Our heart, like if we're putting ourselves in, it's like, okay, let's say we want to manifest soulmate love. If we're putting ourselves into that visualization, that embodiment, the manifestation, and we're like you can feel, like you can create and feel, like if you're just going into it, versus if it's like really happening, you can create a very similar response in the body. It's fascinating. So I would say, yeah, the frequencies and the emotions are so powerful as a way to communicate with the universe. And then it also goes back to foundationally, what I think a lot of stuff, it's not really touched on with manifestation a lot, but identity, structure and identity. So, we can sit there and do money affirmations and manifestation stuff all day long. But if we have a deeply rooted identity that, we're, blue collar or whatever, it's like, because a lot of these things get passed down from, generationally. And then it's like these are encoded in our DNA, which all shiftable. So everything is shiftable. I truly believe we can shift anything. But if we have these, if you will, software programs running in the background, and we're trying to manifest these things, and we haven't rewired and released some of these old programs, then we have a situation to where there could potentially be like a little bit of oscillation. So let's say you take 2 steps forward, and then once you have that thing, that old identity is like, well, no, like we can't have it. We're not worthy of it. And then you take 2 steps back and you blow all the money, right? So it's very interesting the way this works, but identity is a big piece that is missed when it comes to manifestation. It's not, I don't feel like, at least I haven't encountered it other than in one of the magnetic mind training that I did. That's the only time I've ever actually heard it be really talked about, as far as like our structure of how like we see the world and how we see ourselves.
Mm. Yeah, I think that identity piece is huge, which is another reason why getting out of the mind helps with the manifestation process, I guess. And I love what you said about how our emotions are the way that we communicate with the universe. I know, in a lot of like law of attraction stuff and everything, they always talk about the getting into the feeling or whatever, but I've just never heard it said in that way. And I love that. I don't know if you want to say anything more about emotions, using emotions
Yeah.
to communicate with the universe.
Yeah. Well, I mean, at the end of the day too, it's like, it feels way better to be in the emotions of like inspiration and passion and love rather than in like sadness and anger. And I'm all for, feeling the things, like we're human, right? At the end of the day, like emotions are our compass, so to speak. So that contrast is actually can be a gift sometimes because, for example, like I'm on my soulmate love journey and I'll go on dates sometimes and I'm like, oh goodness, like that, that doesn't feel so good. And it gives me more clarity on what I do want. And then I can set the intention for what it is I really, really, truly want and kind of feel into that a little bit more versus, the contrast that comes in. And then it kind of gives us like, if we don't ever experience anything that is, a little bit off or not really our vibe, then it's like we can't intensify what it is we do want. So it's kind of like a blessing. And again, going back to the fact that we're human, like we're going to have off days, right? There's nothing wrong with that. But when we can really learn to shift it as much as possible and to stay in the intention of those more end results and creations, then when the stuff does, so I even like to use the word instead of like trigger, activated, like when those parts get activated within us, it's like almost like, okay, well, this is what you've set the intention for creating, and this is what's causing resistance. So thank you, universe, for allowing me to let that pass through me and to release it. So that I don't have to like, have those patterns and things come up anymore.
Yeah. So our emotions act kind of like a compass. We have to have the negative ones to help tweak things to get us back to, figuring out what feels good to point us in the right direction, right?
Yeah, and I think too, it's as I move forward in my journey, I have less of those days. So when I was first kind of getting into a lot of this work and really just kind of like, okay, like this is some of the stuff that's happened. Like these are some of the things I want to shift. Um, I would say more and more, I am as I more embody who I truly am in like a very unapologetic way, it gets easier. It doesn't, like the dense emotions, they don't come up quite so much. Because I think like it's something too, like for the most part, like we're supposed to, like by divine design, be happy and live a life that we like absolutely love, to where we wake up and we're not like dreading it, but yet we're like, oh, I get to do this today because I created this and I chose it. Like there's such a power in choosing what it is that we want to create. And it's like we can, like you can, and it's just all the limiting beliefs and all the other like crap that really just we're in our own way most of the time when we're not seeing those. It's like those people that keep going, like they're like they want to complain about what they have going on in their lives, but they go back over and over and over again to the same thing, repeating the same story. Now, behavior is one of the highest forms of communication with the universe, right? So if we're not taking inspired action, like we're standing still. So it's just an important component to it.
Mm-hmm. I love how you said, as I embody who I truly am in an unapologetic way, it gets easier. I love this. Again, I just published a podcast today kind of about this because I keep hearing about people who are talking about, somebody just asked me the other day about, like she basically was saying she's afraid to post on social media except on like her page. She doesn't want anybody like in her life to see what she's doing. So she's like only posting on her page, but there's not a lot of people on her page, like her business page on Facebook versus her profile or whatever. So the part about being unapologetic really speaks to me because that's, I always talk about living a fully self-expressed life. And as long as we're playing small and hiding out, we're not fully self-expressed. And So I would love to hear your take on like how can the universe deliver what it is that we really want if we're afraid to be, embody who we truly are in an unapologetic way. So I'm wondering if you can.
I absolutely love this conversation and this question because I've been there. That's where I was like crippled in fear for several years where like I used to not even have social media. I was like, oh my gosh, like what are people gonna think of me? Especially being in a law enforcement community, right? Like it's a very masculine field. Sometimes I feel like it's a little bit like high school. Some of the stuff that like goes on, it's a little high schoolish, and I'm like, people are gonna like talk about me behind my back, and it
Mm-hmm.
was, even some people that like some of my old partners that I worked with, for hours and hours and hours in a day, like didn't even really fully know this side of me because it was something that I wasn't ashamed of it, but I was just, I was afraid. Like I was afraid of the judgment. I was afraid of fully stepping into my truth and sharing it in a way that was just raw and real. So for those out there that are feeling that way, I completely get it. And I will say, on the flip side, once I was able to really step out of that and more into alignment with who I am, it's really cool to see how things respond. Because what I will say is I'm not going to be for everybody. There may be people that like don't resonate with me, and that's okay. And I had to get to a point where that was okay.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but what it does do is it makes you a magnet to your soul aligned clients, to your community,
Exactly.
to the people that need you, to the people that, I'm here to show up for. Right. So um, it's just a whole different energy when you are being authentic. You are like a magnet to those people that are ready for, your guidance and help. Because one thing too is it's like I'm not here to tell anybody what to do. I'm here to share what I've learned and to empower people. So there's a difference. And that's why I always like tell my clients too, it's like if something doesn't feel aligned, don't do it because it's going to come through. So really, and to speak back to, the visibility piece, um, it's what my suggestion would be to tune in, because it's like we all like sometimes we avoid that inner voice, but we know like tuning into your heart and asking what it is, like what is it that is really holding me back, like what am I afraid of. Sometimes it's like we're just afraid of our own greatness, like we're afraid because we're
Mm-hmm.
going to out, and now we have some sort of responsibility to show up. When you put yourself out there in this way, like like we both can probably agree, like we're almost responsible to the work, because there are people out there that are like, okay, they're going to show up this week, and I'm ready for what they have to say. Like it's helping me along my journey. And actually a lot of the responses that I've got so funny are from officers that I used to work with that have reached out, and even privately, thank you so much for what you shared today in your post because you didn't know how much I needed.
Mm.
So you never,
Yeah.
even if it's just one person, you never know.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. And I totally agree. I mean, it does take a lot of personal development. And that was kind of how what I said to this person that was asking, my advice on how to feel comfortable showing up. Um, when you're an entrepreneur, it takes a lot of personal development to get past the fear of being judged and criticized by other people. And just like you said, I feel like, we're not here to enlighten everybody on the planet, but unless we are willing to be judged or have people think that we're weird or whatever, we won't find those what do you call them? Soul aligned soulmates
Yeah,
or
like
yeah.
soulmate, soul aligned clients. I love it.
Yeah.
Like the other people that you'd want to
Yeah.
go and have dinner with, right? Like those are the people
Right.
I want to work with, my friends.
Yeah. So how can you find them though if you're playing small and you're afraid to fully show up? And I do think that there is a piece of it that is, as human beings, we are afraid of our own greatness. Like what would actually happen if I was fully self-expressed and if I did fully show up authentically? Yeah, you might scare some people away. You probably will, but on the upside of that? Like what are you going to attract, and who are you going to attract, and like, what kind of greatness are you going to experience? And I think we are probably, I think there's some deep-seated fear about how great we actually are. Um, that
Yeah,
Mary.
absolutely. No, I completely agree. I would say too, like one thing that's become my best friend is the block button. There's no shame, just block them,
Mm,
right? Like if there's some
mm-hmm,
people say very unkind things on the internet, but it's like you don't have to choose to like, you can just be like, oh, okay, cool. Well, I don't, I don't,
mm-hmm,
I don't, this means nothing to me. Like you don't have to choose
mm-hmm,
to take personally, right? So, and
mm-hmm,
it is cool because some of like some of the reasons why we might be afraid, even going into like the feminine and how, you can speak for it like generationally, or, if some people like resonate with like past lives, whatever, however you want to like slice it. But there has been like a suppression in the past, and there has been punishment for speaking our truth in some ways, and in that spiritual way as well. And so I went through it a bit. And I think there were things that came up for me that was like, okay, this makes sense as to why I'm hesitating a little bit. But that's the cool part of where some of the energy work comes in, because the type of energy work I've learned, and it's like this rapid rewiring of the energy field. So it's like uh, the neurology, you can even like, there's a video of like watching the neurons like fire differently. So this stuff is scientific as far as how we can really shift this stuff to where we don't have to like sit in it and keep repeating it. Because kind of like we talked about, it's like affirmations and whatnot are great, but if you're rooted in this very dense energy or these patterns or the identity, it can be very challenging. And so, if I, it, I don't want people to feel like, oh, there's no way out and like I can't do it on my own. It can be very, very challenging to break some of these patterns, because we've been doing them for, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years. And then it's not something that necessarily shifts overnight either.
mm-hmm. So, I know that a lot of what stops people is the fear of like the haters, the criticism, like you were talking about, the block button has become your best friend. And what I always like to say is like, if you're playing small, you're not going to get criticized, but you're not going to succeed either. And so when you start to get the haters and the criticism is when it's like a sign that you're on the map, right? But that being said, it's still, like we were talking about, like there's personal development that needs to happen, or energy work, or whatever it is that needs to happen for most people. I mean, some people can maybe flip a switch and all of a sudden they're fully self-expressed and they're not afraid to be completely authentic. But I think for most people, it's a journey, it's a process. It's not as simple as like one day I'm kind of hiding out on social media and the next day I'm like showing up fully. So what would you suggest for somebody as far as the personal development or the energy work, or based on the modalities that you're familiar with, like what would be something that could be suggested to somebody that just feels blocked or stopped or afraid of rejection or whatever, to help them move past that and tap into who they truly are and just like shine their light more brightly?
Yeah, I would say it's definitely a combination of things, right? Like if you are feeling like I will always have some sort of coach or like mentor that I'm working with. I think that it's super cool because it creates this like almost creative tension, right? So where you're like co-creating together, and then a lot of times like people see things that you may not see. And as far as the energy work, I've been the specific type of energy work I do, I've been working with it on myself, with other coaches. Probably it's been almost a year actually, because, and again, it depends on what it is, but I would say, it takes, and it's like that's where it's like not being hard on ourselves and giving ourselves like grace to really move through this stuff. It's not about perfection. It's kind of an illusion anyway. There's no such thing. So anywhere from like 6 to 12 months to really shift a lot of these patterns, because it's again going back to once again the structure and identity piece. when we practice something so many times, there are certain things that may shift in like, a couple sessions or whatever, like you have those breakthrough moments. But there are other things that, it may take a little time to let go of some of this stuff. At a very like foundational level, like if it's something where you're like, okay, I kind of just want to, do a lot of this stuff on my own. I would say always coming back to, a thing that I even do when I'm feeling like I'm in my head a little bit. I take a pause and I bring my focus and intention and my energy to my heart and I just breathe. And I'm like, okay, like, can I just let some of this go? Because super conscious, yeah, I work with super conscious, but we all have a super conscious. We all have a higher self. We all are connected to the divine. And what it really is about is just our ability to bring more light through. And so when we stop and we're like, okay, this doesn't feel good, I'm just going to choose to let it go and move through me, rather than when we like convulse and hold on to it, like we're grasping onto that energy and we are continuing to recreate it rather than just pausing. Like there's such a different energy between pausing and just taking a few breaths and just allowing it to move through you. Also, like writing it out helps, for some people. Like when you're having those things come up, it can be a very like therapeutic meditative process to, if let's say you're having these feelings of judgment, or you don't really know how to show up, or you don't really know what your next step is, just setting the intention to get that information from your higher self. Like I actually prefer working with like higher self super conscious than like kind of leaving it up to whatever, there's so many different energies in the universe, but
Mm-hmm.
you know best what is best for you, because we can tap into our future self. Like time is not linear as we know it. Like in the quantum, all the possibilities are infinite. So you can literally have a conversation with that up-leveled version of you that already gets it, and you can choose to embody it in this moment. So it's really cool when you look at it from that perspective.
Yeah. Yeah, one of the exercises, I don't know if you have a specific exercise maybe that you can share, maybe that you use with the people that you work with, but one of the things that I do sometimes in my journal, is I'll ask a question. Sometimes I ask it specifically to like my father who's not alive anymore, or I'll just ask it to my higher self or whatever, but I'll just like, I'll like write like what's going on and then a question. And then I'll say, okay, I'm going to turn the page and then you can answer me. And I turn the page and I just start writing, and it just kind of just comes through my pen. And it's amazing what I can, like some of the answers that I've gotten that way, or just some of that, it's coming from me. Right. But it's like, I just have to like ask. And that's one way that I've found that works really well, like a way to ask and actually just get an answer. Like sometimes like the words that come out, like if I ask a question to my father, it's his words. Like it's not my word. It's like things that he would say. And like, I'm always like, how did that just happen? That is like wild, but it's anyway, I'm just wondering if you have a specific exercise or something like that that you use to help people, do something similar to that.
Well, first off, I absolutely love that. Isn't it so cool how we like, I mean, as humans, we're like, okay, they're not here. They really are. Like, we're so connected. And it's like that illusion of separation, right? So I absolutely like love that practice. And that's amazing. So so yeah, one thing I actually do with my clients, I was doing this the other day actually, is I always like have them start getting into their heart, grounding and connecting. And I always remind them, like, you have access, like, yeah, I can bring stuff through from intuition, but I like to get them in that place where that they understand like they are connected too, so they can practice using that intuition muscle, as I kind of refer to
Mhm.
it, like kind of a muscle, right? So, but what I'll do is I'll kind of take them through a meditation, and I'll take them into, whether it's 3 months from now, a year from now, 10 years from now, into connecting with that version of themselves that already like figured it out, right? So, okay, what advice does she have for you? And it's so cool, like what comes through, and we'll all just be like, okay, I'm going to take notes on this, so you don't have to worry about it, or record it, and then they just start like going off about all this stuff, and it's just amazing because it just gets you in the energy of like all the things, that the infinite potential, and all the advice and all the wisdom and all the things. So it's a really cool practice. And then kind of going into because that would be kind of a way I'd get someone into an end result. There are multiple kind of things they do, but I always set that structure of like the true end result and really feeling into that, and then going into okay, well, what is coming up like in the here and now that is causing resistance to having that? So I give like the analogy, if you will, of like the river of desire. So we want to be able to just flow downstream to the things that we're manifesting and creating. And we can use super conscious to just remove any like rocks, boulders, twigs that are like impeding your ability to flow. And that's like where, if you're really truly wanting to show up as like this powerful coach or, business owner, whatever it is, and you're having these feelings bubble up, related to like the judgment or the fear or the doubt, it's like, okay, this is coming from somewhere, right? We're not going to like discount that. And maybe it was something that happened when you were 3 and you got judged by somebody and you created this story around it, and you just don't quite know how to shift it. Like I didn't know how to shift any of this stuff. But it's like, and then it's like you can do, even so simple as like one session on it, and literally with different practices, whether it be like an NLP, like a neuro linguistic programming thing, or what I call is the super conscious recodes, a combination of the two. And you can like, then they come out of the meditation like, whoa, I don't feel that energy anymore, because we can shift it that quickly.
Mm-hmm. Do you use tapping at all? I know that's another way that you can shift it kind of quick too.
Yeah, I don't do a ton. I'm very familiar with tapping. I've used it on myself sometimes. Sometimes literally like in a session, I'll kind of get the download to have them do some tapping. But overall, primarily I use the super conscious recodes and a couple other like processes, and then just kind of flow through it. And sometimes, like as we were kind of talking about at the beginning, like the wild things that will come through, that's how I fully know that I'm like tuned in to super conscious, because it'll just be random stuff that I'm like, I don't know where I'm getting this from. Well, I do know, but it's obviously not coming from my mind. It's coming from your super conscious. And it'll be like, oh my gosh, like that was like spot on. And I'm like, well, it's just you, like, I'm just connecting to the field of information, right? That is your super conscious. So it's pretty cool to see how that stuff comes through, and it's just so accurate when we like step aside, right? And allow that to really just come through in really cool ways.
So what do you mean when you say super conscious recodes?
So that goes to, I am certified as a magnetic mind coach. And that is one of Chris Duncan developed the magnetic mind method. And this was like the missing piece of the puzzle for me in a lot of ways. So a super conscious recode is, again, going back to what the super conscious is, it's that field of information that contains info on our DNA, our family history, our belief systems. Like it's, so if you think of it as like we got the
Like the
conscious,
Akashic records kind of thing?
kind of,
Similar?
yeah. I would say I'm not super like I've done a little bit on Akashic records, but I don't, is that more kind of like, that's like soul records, right?
Mm.
Yeah. So, yes. So I would say it's similar, but it's just like this all-inclusive field of information.
Okay.
And when we're tuning into that, we can gather all of all, it can pinpoint all of the resistance. Like if I'm working with somebody, and we're like, okay, well, this belief's coming up or these emotions are coming up, and I'll just so simply ask super conscious to tag it in the field and to treat it. And it literally is like a rapid rewiring of the energy field and a releasing of that. So it's also a piece of working with all parts of us. So we want all parts of us to be a mono personality. So it's all working together in tandem, because let's say we have a part that's like, oh, I really, really want this like love soulmate relationship. And then we have this part that doesn't feel worthy of it, maybe from some situation that happened when we were 10 years old. Again, we have that oscillation piece. So we're not going to be able to have that relationship we want when we have this part that's like fighting it. So we can use super conscious as well in all other areas, but to work with these parts and, inner child work, whatever it is that it might be. As humans, we love to label stuff, which it's all just, we don't necessarily have to, but to really just release all the pain, all the resistance, all the stuff, all the muck. So
Mhm.
it's cool because I can speak to the fact that it works, because before I started doing it, it's like I was waking up to a job that didn't inspire me. I was doing all these things that I just didn't love. And then here I am less than a year later. Um, I moved to a different city. I quit 2 jobs. Like I sold my home and I'm literally like living my best life. Like I'm
Mm.
in all doing all the things that light me up every day, and it's available to everybody.
So is the process that you're talking about with the superconscious recoding, so is that something that you've been trained in that you can help take people through, or is it something that just anybody can do?
So it's something I'm trained in and I'm certified in. I went through a 6-month certification for
Okay.
it. So yeah, I am certified in it. I use a variety of different things, but it is definitely kind of a cornerstone of the work that I do in regards to the energy healing piece of it. But I mean, yeah, anybody can learn to do it. Absolutely. All this stuff is available for everybody. So.
But if somebody could hire you and you could take them through kind of the process, is that like, do you facilitate this for others, or would they have to like do the 6-month certification if they wanted to do it?
I mean, if they wanted to become certified, they would need to do the certification program. But I do teach my clients how to connect to their superconscious, how to let's say that it's a Friday night and I'm not available and they have stuff come up and I'm like, I teach them how they can tune into this field of energy. And that way they're more empowered and they're not I always say like my job's done when my clients don't need me and when we can just be
Mhm.
friends and have that type of relationship, right? So it's to me it's super important to empower people to remember who they really are and truly innately how powerful they are. And so yeah, it is definitely something like the intuition piece I definitely teach to my clients because I also think, and maybe you can speak to this as well, we kind of have our own way that we maybe like for me, like I feel a lot in my body when I'm working with somebody, like I'm very sensitive to that sort of thing. Like I feel things
Mhm.
deeply, and that would be kind of my primary way that I'm like, okay, I'm sensing this and in my throat, and then we can kind of dig a little deeper. Whereas some people like see more visions or they hear more words or whatever. So it's kind of teaching people what their primary way of tuning in is so that they can kind of begin to practice and going back to the intuition being a bit of a muscle, like, and then as you continue to develop it, more like gifts unfold. At least they have for me, as far as like how sensitive I am to certain things and how I can pick up on things a little bit easier than I maybe previously could.
Mhm. So do you mostly work with people one-on-one and help them go through these processes, or do you have courses? How do you work with people or what are the different ways that you work with people?
Yeah, so currently I do a lot of one-on-one work. Currently, one of my business partner and I, we are actually getting ready to launch a master class. So she's certified in this as well, which is going to be because I think it's super important. Because for me, I would never want like finances to be a reason that someone couldn't tap into this work and get help because at the end of the day, like it's super important to me to share this work with as many people as possible because I just think that the planet will be so much better with like so many happy
Mhm.
humans and like that's why I'm here. So
Mhm.
um but yes, so I think it's super important. Like I do have a couple like freebies and I have a free Facebook group. So on my free Facebook group, once a month, I do a free group energy healing.
Hmm.
And it's the super conscious recode. So for the last couple months, I was guided to actually integrate it into a yin yoga class. Because I'm a big yin yoga is like absolutely love it. And I'm like, why wouldn't we be able to like integrate this into yoga? Because as we're like trauma and all these things are stored in the body, and a lot of times they get stored in like the fascia and the tissues, like at those deeper levels and layers, and that's why people have all the disease, all the pain in the body. This is all intertwined. And that's what a lot of people don't quite understand, because we're not taught these things, right? We're
Mhm.
taught if you're not feeling well, you take this pill, mask the symptom. Well, I don't really subscribe to that. Actually, I totally don't, because if you're not feeling well, there is a reason, a deeper reason why. There's just disharmony going on in your energy body. And so releasing this stuff allows for the density to release. And then, I could go into all the stuff with like the physical body stuff, which is also kind of my jam too, but I don't think we have time for that today. I could go on for hours about that. But at the end of the day, like, listening to our bodies is so, so, so important. I guess going back to the yoga class and that whole piece, I was like, so if I could take someone through an hour long like yoga class, because yin yoga is like a very deep meditative, for those on here that are listening that aren't familiar, it's a very deep meditative yoga class, opening up the body, getting into the fascia and the connective tissue, versus like a regular class, which would be more like the bigger muscle groups, and more movement, more fiery. Yin is very, very feminine practice, I guess, if you will. So I'm like, what if we did a class where we're opening the body up, and then we're doing like a recode, because it's like all goes hand in hand, and we're able to just kind of allow the body to release this tension, this trauma, all this stuff. And so I had a lot of people love it. So I'm going to continue offering those, but I've been offering them free once a month, my Facebook group, because again, I think it's important for, those that do kind of want to, they're interested and maybe not, all in just yet, to kind of be able to experience this work and how really life-changing it is.
So you've basically invented this combination of yoga and, right? Like, that's so
Yeah,
cool.
kind of, yeah. Like I don't, if there's someone else on the planet doing it, I'm not familiar or aware, but yeah, it's
You
kind
need
of,
to name it. You need to, it's the something method or whatever, and patent it or whatever you do.
yeah, I know. I was thinking
Great
about
name.
that. You're totally right. I was like, because I originally was just kind of calling it Recode Yoga, but I'm like waiting for the perfect name to come through.
That's a
Because
good name. I like that name. It kind
yeah,
of,
yeah,
like flows off the tongue.
yeah,
Recode yoga. Yeah, I like it. So, one other thing I just want to talk about real quick before we wrap this up is, because I've heard you talking about the masculine and the feminine a bunch on here. Can you just talk a little bit more about the balance of the masculine and the feminine energy, and how that plays into every, intuition or our lives, and, the importance of, is it important that we understand what that is, and how we can have a good balance of masculine and feminine.
yeah, absolutely. It's so important. So, so, so important. And I didn't really realize it. Like, so when I was in law enforcement, I was full masculine.
Mm-hmm.
It was just, yeah, like looking at it now, kind of, and to some degree I had to be, right. Like I had to kind of embody that piece. So there wasn't anything necessarily wrong with it. But the balance of masculine and feminine energy is just so, so, so important. It's so important to manifestation as well, and conscious creation. So it's like this balance of being able to go within and soften. And I feel like a lot of women nowadays have really, like, they just don't, it's not something that we're really taught. Like, and we have like certain things going on to where it's like, oh, like women are like, oh, like I could do everything on my own. And we're very action oriented, and we're very like in our head space. And I've actually seen it time and time again, to where it's this place where it becomes almost like this force, and then it creates this burnout. So my thing is, I'm all about inspired action, those pings. So planting the energetic seeds, going within, being able to be in that flow. To me, feminine energy is flow, and being able to just relax a little bit. Like if we all just like take a deep breath and relax, like life would be a little more enjoyable, right? So
Mm-hmm.
things don't have to be so dang hard. We make things difficult. I know people that are, still kind of in that, they're in that like again, like that grind that we've been conditioned to be in with like the, you wake up and you work, 8 to 10 hour days and then you're exhausted and burnt out. It's just like, there's something so amazing about being able to just be in this flow where things just kind of happen, and it's not something where you have to force it to happen. It's just like this beautiful dance with the universe, and it's when you are embodying both. So I've had to learn more to embody my feminine energy because I operated in the masculine, and it was a lot of based on what I went through in my upbringing. Like I kind of had this a little bit of a hard shell, like nobody messed with me, like having to kind of have that protective barrier, if you will. And I realized that I can still be fierce, but also feminine. So
Mm.
it's kind of one of those things where it's been a learning lesson for me, and especially on, when it comes to love and relationships. We definitely, I don't necessarily want to say get it wrong, but a lot of times like it's the way that we've been taught to even have relationships, and the emasculation that a lot of women kind of bring to the table. It's like, it's so crippling to men. And I feel like, I don't want to get too far off topic, but a lot of them don't even know necessarily what to do or how to act anymore, because so many women embody like 0% of their feminine. So
Right.
it's just
Yeah.
very interesting conversation to have.
Yeah. That makes sense. I never thought about that piece before, because women are much different than they used to be as far as how empowered they are and how independent they are, and all the things that that we do now as women that women didn't really always do. We don't really need to necessarily be provided for in every
I'm all
way.
for
Like,
that. I'm 100% all for that. Like I'm, um, that way as well. But I also know now I know how to embody both. I
mm-hmm,
know, to me, feminine too is a very playful energy, right? And when we're in that very like divine, like playful, fun energy, it allows like even the masculine, so men, to relax as well. But when we're in this uptight, like, work, 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 and, we don't even find a time to breathe or have a good time or set ourselves, even some people can't even find like 2 hours in their week to set aside a time to, fill their cup back up. Because I always say, like, you
yep,
can't get from an empty cup. So it's
mm-hmm,
like finding that balance in life, and having that flow, and it should feel good most of the time.
mm-hmm. Yeah, it's so true. I've been having this conversation with some of my friends recently about how sad it is that we come to this point in our lives where we're so busy that we can't even find time for each other. Like, I was trying to get together with a group of my friends that none of us had seen each other in a while, and like, because of everybody's crazy schedules, finding a time that we can all do it is like herding cats. I mean, it's like impossible. And it makes me so sad. It's almost like we've been programmed. It's like, I guess, that masculine energy, like we're programmed like to be busy, 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 busy. And we feel guilty if we carve out time for our friends. Like it's almost like there's something wrong with that. And it's, as I'm just really starting to have this realization as I get older. It's making me very sad, actually. Like, that's not what life is supposed to be, right? Aren't our, like, the downtime and the time to smell the roses and the time to spend time with the people that matter to you should be more important than anything else.
Mm.
But I think it's really hard for us as humans to find that balance.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And I could get real esoteric on what I think is going on behind the scenes. But I think at the end of the day, like one of my main things in business is to have my business work for me and to provide massive
Mm-hmm.
value and impact, and to not end up being like to where I'm literally a slave to my business. If I don't
Mm-hmm.
know how better to say it, because, people create these like almost cages for themselves, and they're
Mm-hmm.
like, waking up like, a full day of, actually one book I'm going to recommend to any like entrepreneurs and people on here, is Who Not How. So I just finished reading it, and it is, oh, it's absolutely amazing. So basically the foundation of it is, instead of thinking, how am I going to get this done? Especially if it's something that doesn't inspire you. Now, if it's something you're like super excited about and it inspires you, that's a different conversation. who can help me get this done. So creating
Mm,
like for entrepreneurs, like creating a team, because we look at it like, oh, I don't want to invest like, 5K into that. Well, what if you just gave yourself like 20 hours a month back? And what if, whoever it is an expert in the field, and what they're going to bring is going to give you a return on your investment of 20K or 100K or
mm-hmm,
whatever. We look at
mm-hmm.
investing in ourselves. It's like almost like, oh, well, I need to do it the cheap way or the do it yourself way. And, it's this book goes into it even more, but it was a mindset shift for me, because as I've continued to outsource, it's like the investments come back tenfold. So
Mm-hmm.
that's where we can get our time back and scale to where we are providing that massive impact to people and value, and still coming at it from like that heart-centered business, and to where we're not like, I'm not getting up at 7 a.m. and on calls with clients till 8 p.m. Like
Right.
that to me, that then my level of what I'm able to give to people is going to go down, because I'm going to be tired, and maybe I'm just
Yeah.
not going to be as into it. Whereas if, I limit my one-on-one clients, and then I have all these other offerings, and I'm able to scale and still provide that value. So, and then hire teams that can, do some of the back end stuff. Like for me, like graphics and things like that, like it's just not my specialty. So, hiring someone to do, the marketing, the graphics and all that cool stuff, it's like then they can, have work in their genius while I'm
Mm-hmm.
not tying up my time. And it's gonna, the return, like if you're putting that intention out there, right, and you're doing it from that space, like you're gonna get the return.
Yeah, well, the time that while they're creating your graphics, you can create more content or be in your zone of genius, doing more of your thing while they're doing their thing. So, yeah, I'm
Yeah.
all about leverage
Yeah.
and freedom. Like I feel like that's my purpose in life is to create freedom for myself, but also to help other people do the same thing. And I just feel like if I'm working myself to the bone, then that's what I'm demonstrating to others, that's how it has to look, right? So by you outsourcing these things and not overwhelming yourself with these tasks that you can outsource, you're demonstrating to other people how they can also live that way. I'm definitely going to get this book. It sounds awesome.
Oh yes, it's definitely amazing. No, it's yeah, it's super cool too. It's definitely a mindset shift. And just kind of one more little note about it, I do feel like we're kind of in a paradigm shift right now, because so many people are in that awakening process, and they're like, yeah, like maybe I can do this. Like maybe I
Mm-hmm.
can monetize what the thing that's inside me, because we all have it. Everybody listening, you have that thing that is ready to be unleashed to the planet that you can
Mm-hmm.
monetize, that authentic, raw thing. It's there. You just got to remember it, tap into it. And it's so cool to see, because there, in going back to even what you touched on with the freedom, like lifestyle, it's like, that's what life's supposed to be about. It's not supposed to be exhausting. It's not supposed to be depleting. And it's like, that's like the main thing, if not anything, that I'm just super passionate about, is reminding people that you don't have to hate your life. It doesn't have to suck.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm sorry. I'm jotting down some notes.
I love
You've
it.
dropped so many good nuggets today.
Oh, thank you.
So I'm so glad that we got to have this conversation. And can you tell people, we'll connect to all of the best places for people to connect with you in the show notes. But if you want to tell people also right now, the best places to find you and your work, that would
Yeah,
be awesome.
of course. So yeah, my free Facebook group where I do those energy healings. It is called the Fierce Feminine. But obviously for all you men out there, I do still work with men. So my website's another good way to connect with me. I do have a free emotional recode that if you're kind of interested, this isn't like the super conscious recodes, but it's kind of a practice that I use with my clients to help them shift any like negative emotions or energy patterns. So if you're just kind of wanting to like get a little taste of what I do, and it, like I said, it's very, very little taste of it, but this audio is pretty awesome. And you can always I have an open door policy. So if you have any questions, like shoot me an email, or a message if you're just kind of like, this kind of woke something up in you and you have a question. I'm always, I'm here to serve people. And that's the main thing, that it's like, if I can just get this information out and, maybe even I just, shed some light for one person on this call, then I'm completely happy with it.
That's awesome. Can you say what your website is?
Yes, it's just my name. So amandamonnier.com.
Spell your last name just in case anybody doesn't know how to spell it.
Yeah, it's a tongue twister. It's MONNIER.
So Amanda Monnier, MONNIER.com. And then what about like, do you have like Instagram, Facebook, all that stuff too? Or
Yeah, so it's all like, my Instagram is just my name as well, Amanda
Okay.
Monnier, and then my Facebook is just under my name as well. So
Okay, perfect. And then, like I said, we'll link to all of that as well in the show notes. And do you have any last thoughts that you want to leave people with before we wrap this up? Anything I didn't ask you that you think is important to share or anything?
I would just say, just that reminder, like everybody has something amazing inside of them to share. And if you're feeling like something's missing and a little unfulfilled, or like you're continuing to like repeat certain patterns, or you're stuck, like that, you can shift it. Absolutely, you can shift it. And it's not, again, it may take a little time to see it, but it starts to feel better and it starts to get better. And that's truly, truly like what being here is about. And, again, there's no right or wrong way to do this work, but it's just, again, that emotion as your compass. Like, it should feel good most of the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I love one of the last things that you had said was something about, I was starting to write it down, but I didn't really get to write the whole thing down. Something like, life is not supposed to be depleting or
Yeah.
exhausting,
Yeah.
like so important to remember, because I feel like we've somehow along the way, we've forgotten that. And we think that busy is better or something, like it's almost like a status symbol to be busy and
I like totally
exhausted and overwhelmed.
Yeah, totally. Totally. Yeah. Productive instead of busy. Mindset shift, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I totally agree. Like if you're being productive, doing things that you love to do, then it's like the best of both worlds, right? Rather than feeling like you have to go through the grind, doing stuff that you hate, and then carving out time to do the things that you love. Like, why not combine it all and have your life be about that?
Yes.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. Good stuff. So thanks again, Amanda, for being on here with us today. And I'm sure a lot of people are going to get a ton of value from this conversation. So
Yeah.
it's been
Thank you so
awesome.
much, Amy. Yeah. So awesome. I love it. Good conversation as always. It's always fun to talk about
Yeah.
things. So
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, we'll wrap it up for today. And again, you can find all of Amanda's information in the show notes. And I hope this has been helpful for anybody listening today. So that's it for today. And we will talk to you guys in the next episode.